know, and they're like, this dude doesn't trust that dude, so I don't, I always thought that was kind of cool. Right here we've got our love sculpture. It's actually one of 12 in the country, so you may have seen. Some people actually are collecting photos of themselves in front of the sculpture. If you like, I'm happy to go over to keep rolling. Well, we can keep rolling there. We got some more shade over here, but this is also the second highest selling stamp in the States, right behind the American flag. So, because a lot of people are like, I recognize it, but I don't know where it's from. Yeah, that was. Oh, you know what? And I've made a lot of those, so I had perhaps some more discerning eyes than the average person. However, I would drive by it and I was like, there's something off with this guy's head. Like, it's not quite the right size. What is going on? Well, I was driving by to do a public art install with my old boss, and he's the one who actually owns the foundry, and he goes, oh yeah, you know the story behind this? I'm like, what? And he goes, so that was actually cast at my foundry. It was before I worked there, but he goes, the artist that won the commission started building it from the ground up. Couldn't tell you why. That's not how sculptors usually work. Artists in general, usually they'll have like, even if it's a painting, like you'll kind of get like the orientation of everything, like the subject and like the overall shapes and organization, and then you'll hone in on the details. Same thing with the sculpture. You start with like the size, then well, this guy starts from the ground up, and because of doing that, once he gets to the shoulders, because the thing is, in this casting, it's also, he's standing on like a soapbox or something like that, which is on top of a concrete pedestal, so the thing stands pretty high. But when the guy's building it, he gets to the shoulders only to find out he doesn't have enough room to fit the head on, because the ceiling is too low. And so he makes the head separate. Now, castings like that one that we just saw, those are always cast in several sections and then put together by what are called metal chasers. That's like welding it together and matching textures, all that stuff. Well, that's, so it's not crazy to have like the head separate. But the problem is normally you'd have the whole piece, and then you would take a mold of it, and then you would cast it, and then break those pieces into sections, and then cast those in bronze. But since he did it that way, they just cast everything straight to metal, and he never had a chance to fit the actual head on the actual body. So the scale is off by just a little bit. And if you drive by, you'll go, what in the, like, it's not glaring, but like, it stood out to me, and I'm like, yeah. What in the heck? And so I always tell people, I'm like, I promised in real life he had a normal sized head. A weird artist. I just wanted to pause here quick because I want to show you. This is one of my favorite spots. Cool gelato. So when I look around here, I'm not much, especially right now I'm single, so I'm not much for eating out. I cook a lot, but I actually did come here rather often because this spot is amazing. It was started by 3 Italian immigrants that actually moved over here to open up a gelato place. And so they came over here as gelato chefs, which I'm like, I didn't even know that was a thing. I thought gelato was just something chefs did sometimes, right? Let me go and get wife there, so he is the namesake of Scottsdale. This sculpture was actually made from the only known picture of the two of them. And by the way, I've looked up the photograph. It looks just like this, meaning she has that same sort of what I think of as like a middle school principal's expression face going on, you know? And he's got that look of like the what I always think of as like the classic like boyfriend, husband look of like, I don't know what I did wrong, you know? Like, that's exactly what he looks like in the photograph.
I'm just here for the picture.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, yeah, are you taking it yet? Come on.
Come on.
Yeah, yeah. You know, and another thing, I mentioned how these are all cast in sections. You look right here, so my guess would be that this casting is, so I bet this course is probably cut right here and right here on either side, and this whole like rump section was cast, but it was also cut right here. And so it's all, fronts are always hollow. But right here, you can see the seam where they welded it. That would not have passed muster at the foundry I was at. Like, now, to be fair, you don't really see, everywhere else they seem to have done a good job hiding the, you know, really you shouldn't be able to see it at all. But like, that's just kind of sloppy. First time I'm like, no way, really? Right on the tail. But that's, so yeah, he's you know, Scottsdale, you know, he was actually, his story was he wanted to go into the clergy, but he goes in, he gets drafted to fight in the Civil War for the North as soon as he's getting out of seminary, so he goes into the army as a chaplain. And they were only in 3 battles, and he gets injured in every one of them. He gets shot a total of 4 or 5, more than you want to be shot, let's say. And then his last battle, they said were his most minor injuries, which included being bayoneted, aka stabbed by a gun, and taking shrapnel from a cannon. You know, so wow. it was after that they retired down here. He bought all of his land up. Actually started a citrus farm, believe it or not. Which people are like, you're insane. This is desert. What? You know, but because of the canal system we have, he was so successful that this whole area was actually known as Orangedale up until 1898, where they named it, when they named it after him at that point, Scottsdale. And then the city actually wasn't even incorporated until 51. But he was such a big, you know, I think he got here originally in like 74, I want to say, if I'm not mistaken. But that's why it's named after him. And you know, it's funny because the area that he bought, they referred to it as a dale, which is, I'm like, I haven't heard that before. But then I remembered, like, oh wait, no, I have heard other places called something dale. That's why. If you like, the spot he bought was 640 acres. Actually, it was more or less everything we see right now. He bought it $2.50 an acre. Oh my goodness. And even then, by the way, I mean, you know, mid and late 1800s, even then, with inflation and what have you, that was dirt cheap. The reason is, the government had tried to give this land to the Pima Nation for their reservation, and they turned it down. They didn't want, this land was seen as so undesirable. Their name, I can't pronounce it, but the Pima word for now Scottsdale translates to rotting hay. So
wow.
Yeah. So he got like a steal of a deal, and then that kind of led to where we're at right now. All right, we're gonna head this way right now. Right, it's our Indian banyan tree. So what's cool about this, you see this little sign here? The blue one, and then beneath it has that white sign. That is when this tree was planted. It was in 1996. It was given to us in the Sister Cities program. And you can see that the tree there, the sapling, it's like maybe 6-7 feet high. And then in 25 years, it's done all of this growth. So, I mean, these things, they're not indigenous. They take a lot of water. Normally they grow by like marshlands kind of things. And I was looking them up, so I was like, ooh, I wonder if it could cost me, now that I actually have my own home and everything. You know, but I was like, yeah, my neighbors would want to kill me in like 10 years. But I figure that's future me's problem, you know? But I looked it up. So, yeah, they're actually really popular as houseplants, believe it or not, because just like bonsai trees, if you just put them in a small pot, apparently, I didn't know this, apparently, like, almost, if not every tree can be bonsai. Like, if you put it in a small pot, I guess trees, that's just how they behave. I'm like, oh, I didn't know that. Well, conversely, the largest one to date, which is still alive, it's in India, the canopy, the canopy covers, and I looked this up in 2 spots because I was like, that's crazy. But they both substantiate. The largest one, the canopy covers 3.5 acres. Trunk is about, sorry.
No problem.
But you see all these sculptures outside here. Those aren't public pieces. Those are actually all private for sale by these galleries. I've actually worked for not the American Fire Arts Museum, the one just past it, doing the Tina, like the finishing job. So if you've ever seen by public bronze pieces have such a boring color, like why are they all so brown? So black. So that is called, like, so the horse guy right there, you see that's more of the black version, and that horse right there is more of the brown. Those are both variations of what's called Arizona, that's a win, you know. But what I like about it so much is that, again, because of my background, I happen to know how hard it is to get the city to agree to put in what technically considered to be a authorized parking because you have to do buses. And it's basically that design principle of the more moving parts, the more things that can like break or go wrong. And so now, while it's very minimal, whatever they have to do to it to maintain it, not a whole lot.
Coming down the middle, no. Yeah.
This is completely up to you guys, meaning, you know, sometimes should it take 5 minutes, sometimes 15 minutes, or we could literally get going like right now if we want, you know. But I want to give a lot of people get